He stood up, dropped his napkin on the table like it was trash, and told me, loud enough for the whole dining room, "A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you." Then he walked out and left me holding a bill the size of my rent. I didn't cry. Not then. I smiled like I just watched a mildly embarrassing magic trick. 2 years with Trent will teach you how to keep your face smooth while your stomach turns. We'd been together since the end of that weird, half-closed year when everyone was either baking bread or losing their minds. We met at a friend's game night in Minneapolis, bonded over trash TV and the mutual belief that oat milk is overpriced. For a long time, it felt stable, predictable, safe. That's the trick, I think. If someone isn't yelling, you start grading them on a curve. Trent was the kind of boyfriend who always knew the best version of everything. Best coffee bean, best workout split, best restaurant in town if you wanted to be taken seriously. He said things like that, taken seriously, like it was a currency and he was always counting. He also had opinions about my appearance that he framed as concern, little paper cuts that somehow always landed in the same place. If I wore a sleeveless top, not your most flattering angle. If I got seconds at dinner, you sure you want that? If I posted a picture and I looked happy, bold lighting choice. The first time I snapped, it was over a dress. I'd tried something fitted, something I actually liked, and he'd paused in my doorway like he was an art critic. He said, "It's cute, just maybe not in that color. It pulls attention." "To what?" I asked. He smiled like I was adorable for not getting it. "To everything." And because I'm not 16 anymore, I didn't throw a shoe at him. I just told myself he was socially awkward, or trying to be helpful, or stressed at work. Pick a reason, any reason, as long as it meant I didn't have to look directly at what it was. Work was his favorite topic. He worked at a sleek, glassy office downtown, some kind of strategic advisory firm that sounded impressive and vague on purpose. He loved dropping little phrases like client-facing and high-level stakeholders. If I asked what he actually did, he'd answer the way politicians answer questions, with confidence and no details. The weird thing was, I'd never met any of his coworkers. 2 years, not one casual happy hour, not one accidental run-in. He'd met my people, my best friend, my mom on FaceTime, my coworkers from the community college where I worked as an academic advisor. He could charm anyone for exactly 45 minutes. Then, last weekend, he told me I was finally being included. He texted me on Thursday, "Big dinner Saturday, work friends, dress nice, no emoji, no would you like to." Just a calendar invite in boyfriend form. When I called him, he didn't even pretend it was optional. "First impressions matter," he said. "These are the people I spend my life with." "I spend your life with you," I said, trying to keep it light. He laughed once. Short. "You know what I mean. Just don't make it weird." That sentence sat in my chest for 2 days. On Saturday, I got ready like I was preparing for a job interview where the hiring manager already didn't like me. I did my makeup carefully. I wore a black dress that didn't cling too much, didn't swing too much, didn't announce itself. I chose earrings that looked expensive but weren't. I practiced a smile that said, "I'm fine with whatever you think of me." Trent showed up to my apartment 10 minutes late and didn't look at me right away. He scanned me like a receipt. "Okay," he said, "that works. Hair's a little big, but fine." Then he kissed my cheek like he was rewarding me for compliance. The restaurant was one of those places that acts like hunger is a moral failing. Low lighting, heavy silverware, a host who looked like he'd been trained to spot people with student loan debt. Trent loved it there. He said it was elevated. We walked in, and he immediately straightened, like his spine had a corporate setting. At the table were 4 people, 2 guys in crisp button-downs, 2 women with perfect hair and that easy, polished laugh. Trent introduced me like he was presenting a new laptop. "This is Mara," he said, hand on the back of my chair. "She works at the community college." Not my name with warmth, not my name with pride, my name with a label. One of the guys, Wes, I think, smiled and said, "So you teach?" "I advise students," I said, "mostly first years, a lot of please don't drop out energy." I tried to make it funny, I really did. Trent leaned in and said, "She's basically customer service for teenagers," like it was a punchline everyone should clap for. They laughed, not cruelly, worse, politely. I felt my cheeks heat, but I kept my smile. I'd learned that reacting gave him something, like he collected my discomfort and used it as proof he was powerful. The server came over and Trent ordered without looking at me. "She'll have the salad," he said, dressing on the side, "and no bread." I opened my mouth, then closed it. I could almost hear my own brain whispering, "Don't make it weird." The first dig was subtle. The second was sharper. By the third, he wasn't even pretending. He told a story about a work trip and said, "I had to bring Mara to that fancy charity thing once. She thought cocktail attire meant whatever that was." He waved his hand like my entire presence was an inconvenient accessory. One of the women, Sloane, tilted her head and said, "That's harsh." She tried to soften it with a smile, but she looked at me like she was checking if I was okay. Trent didn't notice, or he did and didn't care. At one point, Wes asked what I liked to do outside work. I said, "I paint a little, nothing serious." Trent cut in immediately. "She dabbles, it's cute, like a hobby. A hobby, like I was a toddler showing him finger paintings. I laughed because my body didn't know what else to do. Then my phone buzzed on the table, just once, a notification from my best friend Casey. "You alive?" Trent saw the screen light up and his eyes narrowed, quick. "Can you not?" he said, low, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We're having an adult conversation." The words adult conversation landed like a slap dressed up as manners. Dinner crawled forward. Every time I spoke, he corrected me. Every time I didn't, he made a joke about me being quiet like it was another flaw. When I tried to engage, he pulled the spotlight away from me like I was interrupting. And the worst part? His friends kept glancing at each other, little looks that said, "Is he serious? And why is he doing this? And is she going to say something?" I didn't, not yet. I kept my hands folded in my lap so he couldn't see them shaking. When the checks came, Trent didn't even pause. He didn't reach for his wallet. He didn't glance at me. He stood up, smoothed his blazer, and said, "I think we're done here." I blinked. "What?" He smiled wider, like I'd set him up for a line. "This isn't working. You're not what I need." The table went silent in that unnatural way, like the air itself was listening. I heard Sloane inhale. I heard the server's shoes squeak somewhere behind us. I said carefully, "Trent, we can talk about this later." "No," he said. "I don't do later. I do decisions." Then he leaned in close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne, and he dropped the final one like a mic. "A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you." And then he walked away. For a second, I just sat there, staring at the empty space where he'd been. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, but my face stayed calm. It was like my body went into emergency mode. Keep it together, survive the room, deal with it later. I looked at the check. It was brutal, the kind of number that makes your brain go quiet. Wes cleared his throat. "Mara, that was—" "It's fine," I said, too quickly. My voice sounded normal. That scared me. Sloane reached across the table like she might touch my hand, then thought better of it. "Do you want us to—" "No," I said, standing up. "Really, I've got it." I paid with my credit card and tried not to look like I was swallowing glass. The server avoided my eyes in the way people do when they don't know whether to apologize or pretend nothing happened. I walked out with my shoulders straight like I'd simply decided to leave early. I even smiled at the host. Outside, the cold hit my face and my composure cracked just enough for air to get in. I made it to the corner before my hands started shaking so hard I almost dropped my phone. Casey answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" she said, already panicked. I tried to speak and only managed, "He left me." "Where are you?" she snapped. "Don't move." I didn't. I stood under a streetlight with my fancy dinner hair and my cheap credit card debt and watched couples walk past me like I was part of the city's scenery. Casey pulled up 10 minutes later, hazard lights on, like she was ready to fight someone. She took one look at my face and said softly, "Oh, honey, no. That's when my knees finally gave up pretending. I got into her car, shut the door, and everything I'd held inside that restaurant came out in one ugly, silent sob. Casey didn't ask me to calm down. She didn't tell me to breathe. She just reached over, grabbed my hand like an anchor, and drove. And as we pulled away, my phone lit up again, this time with Trent's name on the screen. One missed call, then another, and another, like humiliation was just the opening act. By the time we got to Casey's apartment, my mascara had become a crime scene and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept replaying the restaurant like a loop I couldn't close. Trent's voice, the way his friends looked away, the weight of that check in my palm like a punishment. Casey kicked off her shoes, tossed me a blanket, and put a glass of water in my hand like she'd done this before. "I'm not going to tell you you dodged a bullet," she said, sitting across from me, "because that's not what it feels like right now." That did it. I choked out a laugh that turned into another shaky breath. I stared at my phone. It was vibrating every few minutes like it had a heartbeat Trent was controlling. 13 missed calls, 2 voicemails, a text that just said, "Answer." My stomach flipped. Casey watched my face change. What is he doing? He's calling, like I'm the one who left him. Of course, she muttered, because consequences are his allergy. I finally opened the voicemails with the volume low. Trent's voice was syrupy at first. "Hey, let's talk," and then sharpened. "Don't be dramatic," and then went cold. "You're embarrassing me." The last one was quiet, controlled, and somehow worse. "You're not going to make me look bad, Mara." I turned the phone face down and felt my throat tighten. He wasn't sad. He wasn't sorry. He was managing his image like it was a fire. Casey stared at the phone like she wanted to throw it out the window. Then she leaned back, squinted at me, and said, "Okay, I'm going to ask something, and you're not allowed to get mad at me." That sentence should have been nothing, but it hit like a door unlocking. "What?" I whispered. Casey hesitated, choosing her words. "Trent's been weird about work for a while, like objectively weird." My heart thudded. "Weird how?" She grabbed her laptop off the coffee table and turned it toward herself like she was about to show me evidence in court. "You know my cousin Joel?" she asked, "the one who works in that downtown finance-adjacent ecosystem where everyone wears the same shoes?" I nodded. Joel was the cousin who once described his job as emails about other emails and somehow made 6 figures. "He knows Trent," Casey said. "Not friends, not enemies, just orbiting. Same building, different companies, same after-work bars, and he said some stuff over the past year that I didn't tell you because it sounded petty." My mouth went dry. "Casey," she exhaled. "Trent's been inflating his role. A lot." I blinked. Once. Twice. Like my brain needed extra time to load the idea. "He told me he's leading projects," I said automatically. "He's always talking about—" "Exactly," Casey cut in. "Always talking, never explaining. Joel said Trent introduces himself like he's management, but he's not, and he borrows other people's work like it's a jacket." I sat there, wrapped in a blanket I didn't remember putting on, feeling something shift under my ribs. Humiliation had been the main flavor all night, but now there was a new one. Clarity, the kind that makes you nauseous because it means you can't unsee anything. Casey kept going, carefully. "Joel said there were rumors about Trent taking credit for a deck he didn't build, name-dropping clients he never met, pitching himself like he's indispensable." I pictured Trent at dinner, performing. The way he'd corrected my sentences like he was polishing himself. The way he'd made my job small so his could look bigger. He didn't dump me because I embarrassed him. He dumped me because he needed a target to stand on. My phone buzzed again. Another call. Another attempt to pull me back into his control. Casey's eyes flicked to it and she said, "Wait, there's more." I looked up. She slid her laptop toward me and pointed to a message request on her social media, a name I didn't recognize, a profile picture of a woman in an office badge selfie. "This came in an hour ago," Casey said. "I didn't open it until you were in the bathroom because I wasn't sure if it was spam. It's not spam." My pulse jumped. "Who is that?" Casey clicked it open, and the first line made my skin prickle. "Hi, I'm Elodie. I work with Trent. I'm so sorry to contact you like this, but I think you deserve to know what's happening." My eyes moved faster than my brain wanted them to. The message was polite, careful, and loaded with tension between every sentence. Elodie said she'd seen me tagged in an old photo Trent kept on his desk. His girlfriend. he bragged about when it suited him. She said she'd heard him talk about tonight's dinner all week, like it was a stage he needed to win. Then the line that made my stomach drop. He's telling people you couldn't keep up socially, and that you ruined his night. He's also telling his family you're coming to his birthday dinner on Sunday, and that he has big news to share. Sunday, birthday dinner, family, big news. I stared at the screen. He's still bringing me? Casey's mouth twisted. He's not bringing you. He's using you. My fingers went cold. I could already imagine it. Trent playing the wounded hero, telling his mom I'd had a breakdown, telling his brother I was insecure, telling everyone I was the problem so no one looked too closely at him. I scrolled. Elodie mentioned internal review. She said Trent was being questioned about a presentation he'd claimed as his own. She said someone had pulled email threads. She said the word HR without turning it into a dramatic headline, which somehow made it scarier. And then, at the bottom, Elodie wrote, I have screenshots. I have the calendar invites. I can prove he's been lying about his title and his work. I can't send everything here, but if you want, I can forward the key pieces. I stared at it until the words blurred. Casey lowered her voice. Mara? You know this means he's about to get caught, right? I nodded, slow. I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel relieved. I felt like I'd been living in a house with a hidden gas leak and someone had finally opened a window. My phone buzzed again, this time a text. You better not talk to anyone. There it was, not apology, not concern, a warning disguised as entitlement. Casey saw it and her eyes hardened. Okay, she said, so he's panicking. I read Elodie's message again, focusing on the part about Sunday dinner. The idea of walking into his family's house made my throat tighten, but the idea of him telling a clean, polished lie about me made something in my chest go sharp, because I knew his family, not deeply, but enough. His mom, Denise, who loved to host and always called me sweetheart like it was automatic. His dad, Ron, who talked to me about movies and seemed quietly proud that his son had a stable girlfriend. His younger sister, Kendra, who once told me, half joking, "You're the only one who can get him to relax." They didn't deserve to be audience members in Trent's next performance, and I sure didn't deserve to be the villain in a story he wrote to protect himself. I wiped my face with the edge of the blanket and sat up straighter. The pain was still there, heavy and real, but something else slid in beside it. Control. Casey watched me like she could see the gears turning. What are you thinking? I took a breath. If I don't show up, he'll spin it. Yep. And if I show up angry, he'll spin that too. Also, yep. I stared at the dark screen of my phone, at his name hovering like a stain. So I don't show up angry. Casey's eyebrows lifted. Mara? I show up calm, I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. Polite, normal, like I'm not there to fight. Casey leaned forward, careful. And then what? I pictured it. The candles, the forced laughter, Trent doing that charming voice he used with parents and managers. I pictured him trying to tell big news to get the room back on his side, and I pictured Elodie's receipts waiting like a key in my pocket. Then I tell the truth, I said, not as revenge, as reality. Casey's mouth curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. A controlled burn. I nodded. Exactly. No screaming, no insults, just facts. My phone buzzed again, and this time I didn't flinch. I picked it up, went into settings, and muted Trent's calls. Not blocked yet, not until I had what I needed. Then I opened Elodie's message and typed back with my thumbs that finally felt steady. Thank you. I want the screenshots. And yes, he told his family I'm coming. I might actually show up. I hit send. The moment I did, the night stopped feeling like something that happened to me. It started feeling like something I was about to finish. Sunday night, I stood outside Trent's parents' house with my shoulders back and my phone in my coat pocket like it was a loaded question. Not because I wanted revenge, because I was done being edited into the villain in his story. The porch light threw that warm, welcome home glow across the snow-dusted steps. Inside, I could already hear laughter, his mom's bright, performative kind, like she was hosting a holiday commercial. Casey had offered to come with me, but I said no. If I brought backup, Trent would call it an ambush. I wanted this clean, calm, undeniable. Elodie had sent me the receipts an hour earlier, screenshots, calendar invites, a couple emails with timestamps, and one painful message thread where Trent took credit for someone else's work in front of a group chat. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse. Normal office dishonesty, documented. I rang the bell. Denise opened the door like nothing had happened. "Sweetheart, you made it." She pulled me into a hug that smelled like vanilla candle and optimism. Trent appeared behind her, dressed like he was about to accept an award. His eyes flicked over me, quick, assessing, like he was checking if I'd come to ruin him. He smiled anyway. Of course he did. "Hey," he said, too casual. "Glad you came." The dining room was full. His dad, his sister, a couple relatives I barely knew, plates laid out, candles lit, a cake waiting on the counter like an innocent bystander. Trent moved through the room, shaking hands, touching shoulders, playing the role of the son with big news. He kept steering people away from me in subtle ways, standing between me and his aunt, interrupting when I spoke, laughing too loudly over my sentences. It wasn't panic yet, it was management. We sat. Denise served food. Everyone asked me how work was because normal people do that. Trent answered for me twice like I was a child. Then, halfway through the meal, he cleared his throat with the confidence of someone about to launch a podcast. "Okay," he said, lifting his glass. "So, I've got something to share." He waited for attention the way a performer waits for a spotlight. "I'm up for a major promotion," he announced. "It's basically locked in. New title, new responsibilities. It's a big step." Denise gasped like she'd rehearsed it. "Oh my gosh, honey." His dad's eyebrows lifted. "That's great. What's the role?" Trent smiled, too smooth. "It's leadership, strategy, bigger scope." He looked at me then, like he expected me to clap on cue, like I was supposed to prove he was real. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just set my fork down and let the silence stretch long enough to feel. "Trent," I said calmly, "before we celebrate anything, I need to address what happened at the restaurant on Saturday." The table didn't freeze. It tightened, like everyone suddenly realized there was a second conversation happening under the first. Trent's smile twitched. "Mara." "No," I said gently, still not raising my voice. "Let me finish." I told them the clean version. That he invited me to a dinner with his co-workers, that he made repeated comments about my appearance and my job, that he ended the night by dumping me at the table and walking out, leaving me with the bill. I didn't add poetry. I didn't add insults. Facts don't need volume. Denise's face drained of color. Kendra's mouth opened slightly, then closed. Ron looked from me to Trent like he couldn't match the image of his son to the behavior he'd just heard. Trent laughed once, brittle. "That's not how it was." I nodded. "I assumed you'd say that." I pulled my phone out and placed it on the table, screen down, not dramatic. "I have timestamps from his calls afterward, and I'm not the only person who knows what's going on." Right on cue, the doorbell rang. Every head turned. Denise looked confused. "Are we expecting someone?" Trent didn't move. He just stared at the hallway like the house had betrayed him. Kendra stood up. "I'll get it." She returned with Elodie, office badge clipped to her coat, hair damp from the cold, expression polite but firm. She held a thin folder like she'd come to deliver paperwork, not detonate a lie. "I'm so sorry," Elodie said to Denise, voice careful. "I didn't want to interrupt a family dinner. I just needed to speak with Trent, briefly." Trent stood fast enough his chair legs scraped. "This is inappropriate." Elodie didn't react to his tone. She looked at Denise instead. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I work with your son. There's an internal matter, and he's been telling people things that aren't accurate." Ron's face hardened in a way I'd never seen. "What kind of things?" Elodie opened the folder and slid out 2 pages. Not a stack, not a novel, just enough. "He's not in leadership," she said. "He doesn't have direct reports, and the promotion he's describing, it's not happening." Trent's jaw flexed. "You don't know that." Elodie's eyes stayed steady. "I do. I'm the one who had to correct the client email when you signed it with a title you don't have." The air in the room changed. It went from confusion to gravity. Denise put a hand to her chest like she couldn't breathe. Trent, is this true? He tried to smile again, but it came out wrong. Too tight, too sharp. This is work politics, you wouldn't understand. Kendra stood up fully now, palms on the table. Try us. Elodie didn't pile on. She didn't insult him. She just laid out the simplest version. Trent had been overstating his role, taking credit, making promises he wasn't authorized to make. HR had questions. The company was already pulling records. The big news wasn't a promotion. It was a reckoning. I watched Trent's face as he realized he couldn't charm his way out of documentation. He turned on me, voice rising. You brought her here. I kept my tone level. You brought me to that restaurant. You set the stage. I'm just not playing the part you wrote. For a second, he looked like he might cry. Then it curdled into rage. Hot, embarrassed, frantic. He shoved his chair back. Unbelievable, he snapped, grabbing his coat. All of you are against me. Denise's voice broke. Trent, sit down, please. He didn't. He stormed out so hard the front door rattled in its frame. No one moved for a moment. Then Ron exhaled like the air had been trapped in his lungs all night. Mara, he said quietly, I'm sorry. Denise's eyes were wet. I didn't know, she whispered. I had no idea. Kendra reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Quick, human, apologetic. Elodie stood there, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else, but she met my eyes and gave the smallest nod. You're not crazy. I stayed 10 more minutes, long enough to answer questions, long enough to make it clear I wasn't there to punish them, long enough to say, calmly, that I was done. Then I left. Trent's spiral started before I got home. First it was vague posts about betrayal and fake people. Then it turned into messages from unknown numbers, little jabs and implied threats. Then a doxing attempt, half-accurate, sloppy, like he wanted me scared more than he wanted to be right. I didn't respond. I didn't argue. I screenshotted everything and sent it to building management and yes, filed a report so there was a record. Not because I thought he was powerful, because I knew he was unstable. 2 nights later, he showed up at my building. Not inside, not past the front desk, just in the lobby, making a scene like the world owed him an audience. I watched it on the security camera feed the manager emailed me, Trent pacing, gesturing, trying to look wronged. The guard kept his voice calm, kept distance, told him he had to leave. Trent didn't leave until someone mentioned calling the police. An hour after that, Denise texted me. I am so sorry, we are handling this. Please stay safe. He is not welcome here either. That message didn't fix what happened, but it closed a door I'd been afraid would stay open forever. By the end of the week, Elodie told me Trent was no longer with the company. He didn't move mountains. He moved away, back to whatever place you go when you've burned every bridge in your own name. I blocked every number. I changed my routines. I asked my friends to stop sending me his posts. Life got quieter in the best way. A month later, I ran into Elodie at a coffee shop. We sat for 10 minutes, talked like two people who'd survived the same storm from different sides, and then we went back to our lives. And the next time someone tried to make me feel small so they could feel big, I didn't argue. I just left them alone with their own emptiness.